There we go. Yeah. Wow, it's echoey. All right, so I'll call the Committee of Infrastructure together for Tuesday, June the 11th. It's 6:30. We have quorum. We have one, well, actually, I guess I'll start at the beginning. Sorry, it's been a long day already. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, and we're honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Wisapsum nations. We have an agenda before us. I would just like to ask that we add one item to the agenda, which is a verbal update on infrastructure projects. And we will add that at the beginning after the minutes. And could I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda? You want to speak?
Yep. I wonder if we should talk about the sustainable infrastructure.
Sure, we could have.
Can we add that to the agenda too, maybe?
Sure, we could add that. It did just come to council last night. And all right, then we're going to look to adoption of the minutes. Was there anything missed or something that we need to add to the minutes? Seeing none, could I get a motion to adopt the minutes as presented by Dawn and seconded by Stuart? Or actually no seconders at committee, sorry. All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Next is public participation. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address us online? Nope. All right, no participation. Moving on then, we will have our presentation on infrastructure project updates.
Good evening. I have no visuals for you and I apologize for that.
It's all good.
Perfect.
I should introduce you. This is Joshua Baylis,
Manager of Engineering. So tonight I'd like to give you a briefing on a number of ongoing projects. So I'll give you a status update. That'll be more briefing wise, and then later on I'll give a group of projects where we might even come back and seek some input from this committee. So that's the order I'll go in. If there's any questions, please feel free to stop me. If you want to talk at the end, that's also fine. The second part of the agenda is Vaughn speaking to the signalization project. So he's giving a bit of a more deep update on those. But I'll go through these and then we'll skip to that one. So the first one is the Lagoon Bridge repairs. So that's an ongoing 5-year contract we have to do a structural analysis and then remediate any of the maintenance and or repairs required. So that came due this year. We've completed the structural review. We've then contracted Stantec to do the detailed design for the call it the most critical or priority items that need to be done. We're planning to go to tender on those as soon as possible and have those all constructed within the end of the year. So those are the critical items that need to be done so the bridge doesn't get derated. And then the remainder will work into our financial plan for 2025 and have those addressed. Next one is going into the Aldine intersection, or sorry, Allendale.
Can I just stop you on the bridge?
Sure.
Just would like to clarify what were the critical updates this year? I've been doing this bridge for 20 years now. So I'm always curious how it's faring and what the latest updates are that they're doing.
Sure, I can return with full detail. I think there's 2 beams up here and I want to say 2 of the piles need to be remediated this year. A couple of connections, but nothing significant. And then the rest is the repaving and things that will happen in the later years. Okay. But I can certainly return with the detailed list. I don't have it on me. Right
Sure,
now.
No problem.
Yeah. Well, that depends on the future investigations. That gets us into the 5 years. But again, I can pull up that report and get those details specifically. Yeah.
Are the wood pilings being replacing with?
Can you use your
Has any consideration been given?
There we go.
There you go.
Has any consideration been given to replacing the wooden pylons with concrete?
I don't believe that's come as a recommendation, but I can certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, carry on.
Just writing that down. What I will say is I think the wood piles fare quite well below grade. It's that transition between below grade and above grade where the tide's up and down, where we seem to see that degradation and then the repair and the bolstering. But I can definitely look into that and get back to you with some details. Yeah. Allendale intersection work. So you'll remember that we had a capital project for the Allendale intersection upgrade. There was a design error relative to the queue lengths. That's now been fixed, remediated, and fully completed. So that was done inside of this year. The Galloping Goose Ped Bridge. So that one we're working quite well with our design partner and build partner. We have run into a bit of a snag with the province and allowances relative to property ownership and potentially design criteria. So we're working through those details with them right now. We've been actively working with them for nearly 2 years, but somehow this has come up quite emergently that they have some vested interest in what type of bridge and the design criteria that we're meeting. So we're working with them, but I do want I guess to reassure you we're on top of it, but it is something you guys should know.
It's a difficult situation.
It's a
Yeah, that'd
difficult
be really
situation.
good to hear more about what the issues are.
Hopefully when we come back in the fall, it'll be a good news story and we can tell you how it went. That would be my hope. Yeah, and then moving into the active transportation counters. So I think we've been talking about that for the better part of a year and a half. That's the brand Eco Counter. It's regionally significant. The CRD, Victoria, they're all using the same ones. We've now installed 7 counters. I have the list. So it's Adai Road, Painter Road. So the trail as it comes up and connects to Painter Road, there's a counter there. Ryder, Hedgestall in Royal Bay, both on the east and south side, one counting only peds, one ped and cyclists. The VMP northbound and southbound. We have cameras that are connected to light standards there, and they're counting traffic in both ways, as well as pedestrians, as well as cyclists.
Is that VMP at Souk where you're counting?
Allendale, sorry.
At Allendale.
Yeah,
Okay.
just north of Allendale. And Wishart Road, just before the school at that street now. Bra Place? Bro Place?
Sorry, where
Right
are we?
before Wishart, right before the school, as you come with Chosen and Wishart, keep going down the road there to the
Oh.
school at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one right there counting cyclists and pedestrians as well.
Okay.
So those have been updated to the regional counter, so they're integrated with CRD's counts. We're getting good data relative to uptick in active transportation. Fairly new, but we'll be able to use those in repetitive years to see how we're doing regionally, which is exciting.
Can I just ask you why Allendale was chosen as a counter location?
Yeah, those were deemed through the active transportation network plan and incorporation of which I guess it would be the active transportation cyclist networks that we think are significant for commuters.
Right.
So that was deemed as an area that would be of significant influence for us to understand where cyclists are going and if they continue right through the Allendale area, they go there and turn left to go to Langford, like where they end up. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Relative to the eco counters, we still have 2 more installations. They're the bigger, the company calls them the totems. So they're the larger, they can also have displays that show the temperature and things like that. They're skinned with the Colwood logo. Those ones we're trying to put in sort of active transportation focal points in the community. So we're trying to install one near the Galloping Goose Bridge when it goes up. So we're looking at what would be the southeast or northwest end. We're still determining which end that would go. And then the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan as well. Right now it's looking like near the Lagoon Lift Station, just a little bit north of that would be another good location for that one. Those have been purchased, ordered, and they're here, and we're just now finalizing location and installation. The BC Transit shelter improvements. So we were successful in 2023 getting those 2 installed, and they just wrapped up inside of 2024. So I thought I'd mention that they're done and in. And for 2024, we've been approved for the same program. So again, where BC Transit supplies the station or shelter, We do the slab and some of the infrastructure relative to lighting. The two locations are on and near Machosen Road. So one of them that's actually on Machosen Road, we are going to put a slight pause on that just to see where we end up relative to the Machosen Road cross section and the traffic model. If that comes to fruition and we get good solid understanding of the cross section there, we may move forward with that bus shelter. Alternatively, we could look at a second location, and the other location is on Painter Road. So that would be an installation we're looking to do inside of 2024.
Okay, just a question. We had a letter recently about connections for bus transit stops. Are you looking now at how people get to the bus stops from both sides of the road?
Relative to pedestrian or cyclist?
Yeah,
Both.
either. Yeah,
So this program is more in isolation relative to, we just look at the metrics relative to ridership. And then if that's a high ridership, we will install this upgraded shelter. But accessibility in terms of on-ramps and things in proximity to the shelter, yes. Our active transportation projects, as they are for the whole community, is where we would more look at the holistic, what's our travel path to this one, everything else. The station upgrades themselves are more limited to the shelter and the immediate infrastructure.
and are you ensuring that they're accessible as well?
We're working towards that for sure. So if it's got a curb in front of it, we would make sure there's letdowns within the vicinity. If it's gravel, we make sure that's smooth, but we wouldn't like add a sidewalk as part of this project right down to the corner or anything like that. We kind of
For sure.
the field fitted as best we can. Yeah.
Yeah, no, more my concern is if you have a mobility device, it can be quite difficult to navigate past some of the furniture that they put in some of the bus stop locations. So
Yeah. I'll make
it's
a note to look at that regardless. I think you're talking more like proximity of the post for this relative to the curb. Can a walker or something like that get by?
yeah.
We'll take a closer look at that for sure.
And Roger has a question too.
Sure. Josh, first of all, kudos for installing these counters. I think they're really needed. My question to you is, what does the basic cost for a basic unit that will connect to your existing system? Doesn't have to be fancy, but roughly what are we looking at in cost?
It really depends. So there's 3 different styles. We have 3 mobile units, and I'm lucky to have Vaughn here with me. He might have some of the detailed costs. So there's mobile units, which we can move around Colwood and put on a telephone pole or a light pole or something like that. I want to say, Vaughn, those are like $3,200, something like that. Yeah, okay. And then there's the bollard style, which you probably see more in the Galloping Goose. The CRD has a lot of those. They just look like a gray bollard, and it's got some sensors and loops that go through the walkway. I think those are, it depends on how many loops and everything else, but somewhere from 6,000 to 8,000. And then the totems are, I think 18 all the way up to 50. Like they can get really robust. But for info, I guess we did this as part of a grant. So we had 60% of all of our costs covered through an active transportation grant that we received, I want to say 1.5 years or almost 2 years ago now. And we're realizing that today. So everything I've just told you, I guess it's 40% of that is our true cost.
Well, I would suggest that you probably need more of the mobile units to give you a better overall view of the traffic flow in Colwood, because as soon as people know, traffic is like water.
Mm-hmm.
It will find the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
So as soon as they see something, you do something to change it and put up a counter, they'll find a way to go around it.
Yeah.
So if you have more counters up, you have a better idea of the action reaction that's going to be taking place. And I truly think it's an investment that you should be looking at to say buy another 4 or 5 and get them out there.
Yeah, thank you for that note. Like I said, we do have, I think it's 3 right now. We also have bought the radar detectors, which are more relative to vehicular traffic and tracking of those. We're finding we're getting a lot of requests for them. So we're tracking that, and then we're going with what engineering needs in terms of feedback, what the community wants in terms of feedback, and we're balancing that. We have a tracking sheet and we're issuing that. It's definitely, the mobile ones are great. They're labor intensive relative to moving often. And then trying to get a statistically significant data back if you're just taking a week or even 3 months, which 3 months was that in the year? And so there's a lot of pieces to it, and we're trying to do it so it's defendable data and actually useful data that informs our decisions moving forward. But point taken, and appreciate that. All good?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think I was on rock wall and retaining structure program. So this is an older program that we are sort of revamping inside of our community. We were able to leverage an existing report, get an update relative to that report, identify our top 15 priority retaining walls. And then from that, we're in the process right now of sending out an ITQ, so invitation to quote for the maintenance and repair of our highest risk. And I feel like you're going to ask me which ones those are. I don't have that list in front of me, and I apologize in advance. It comes from, like I said, a consultant group that's now been, I think it was done in 2014 or 2015. We revamped it last year in 2023. So we've got really good data to support which walls, there's sort of the, call it risk and consequence, and that matrix to determine which ones we need to do and address. And then we'll be doing as many as we can inside of this year.
Are you doing that in conjunction with our insurance provider? MIA?
We are seeking advice from MIA when necessary, 100%.
Just because they sometimes have some grant programming too.
You betcha. Thank you. Active transportation projects. So you're probably very aware of the lending relative to Hagel, Kelly, Lagoon. Those works are, call it underway. They've started survey layout. They've started locates, things like that. Real work on Hagel should begin the early part of next week. We've been collaborating with the CRD relative to a water main upgrade on Hagel Road. So trying to navigate that and make sure that we're not doing our work, having them rip up our work and redo it. So it's been some really good collaboration between our two entities and some positive relationship building there. Relative to those two projects, our focus is Hagel and getting that done at least as done as possible before school comes back. Second would be Lagoon because of the slopes. We definitely want to try to get that done in the dry season. As soon as it starts to rain with those higher slopes, it just is not a good project to be running. And then we're using Kelly as not a stopgap, but if weather or something comes up in the other two projects, we'll be jumping to Kelly to finish that. We're hoping and still intending to get all three done before the end of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, I've walked Lagoon several times.
Mm.
And I shake my head every time wondering why the city chose to put the sidewalk on the south side rather than the north side. The south side has many more private driveways, has telephone poles. The south side has sidewalk partway down at the top and partway up at the bottom. There's the slope, that's the bank, where there's going to be a major development going in. And I'm sure the contractor or developer is going to be asked to step forward to help pay for part of the active transportation network planning along there. Plus, most of the kids that go to the school, they live down in the lower section off, what is it?
Goldfinch?
Goldfinch, thank you.
Mm.
And so I've asked a couple of people how many students going to school live in between Millburn and Lagoon, and there's only 3 high school students. So you're going to have elderly, young children coming up Goldfinch, having to cross Lagoon, go up the sidewalk, and then cross back to Lagoon. Also, the buses come up Lagoon. So the bus stops are on the right-hand side. So people walking down are going to have to be crossing the road all the time to catch the bus stops. So to me, it makes no sense to proceed with that project until such time as the development starts, and then have the developer chip in and put the sidewalk on the side where a lot of the young kids are going to be using. So I don't know how we chose that location, but to me, it's not a good choice. Could you explain that?
Like the last part, could you explain that? I think I can try. So that was done quite a few years ago, but I think the sentiments would be the same. The guiding principles at the time, which I'd have to look into for specifics, but that would have been analyzed by our consultant group relative to the surveying we would have done. So it would have been a balance of constructability. I can't speak to the development. Which one are you speaking to? The
Two
development,
waters.
the two waters? The Front's Lagoon. Okay, I'd have to look at that specifically. But I would say that at the time of choosing this project, the funding required and what we put forward, what we had designed, it probably would have been difficult to link that directly to that development and say, I mean, they have their DA already, which would stipulate their frontage improvements and all the other requirements. So that would already exist regardless. But yeah, I mean, I'd have to look specifically at all the points you just made relative to driveways and all the rest. And I can get Tyler, the project lead, to go through that specifically. But we've been through the sort of pros and cons of which side and usability and what we're going to do. And there was logic to defend where we ended up. So I'd have to come back with those exact points.
Were school children considered in that decision-making process?
I would hope so, but I'd have to go back to speak categorically to that.
See, I guess my thought, if something doesn't seem right, even though we've done a lot of the engineering and design, can easily be put on hold until such time as we get all the data and then move forward with a good decision. I mean, to me, I think we're spending money where we don't need to be spending money. And again, I reiterate, from my standpoint, walking that road several times, it doesn't seem to be a good logical choice, especially with the buses coming up. So everyone, and you know what's going to happen. People are late for the bus. They're going to be running across that road to get to the bus stop, and you can't be putting crosswalks 3 or 4 down for the bus stops.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think you would want to put the sidewalk on the side where the bus stops are.
Yeah, like I said, I have to look more at it. I think to infer that it's sort of not a logical decision or a bad one would be presumptuous at this stage for sure. We did do what you've just described relative to Fulton. So that project has been put on hold more in association with, is that something the community in that area wanted? Constructability relative to tree loss, retaining wall construction. We've done that same exercise for the remainder of the projects, and it still came through as a viable project that the community would benefit from. But I take your point. I'll revisit it for sure and circle back if anything comes up that suggests we should delay it. Thanks.
Stuart?
Thank you, Chair. I hear you, Roger. I understand all your points. I don't argue with them. But you know, you say you walk that Lagoon Road. I've been driving that Lagoon Road for a number of years. The cracks in that road are quite scary. The bank is moving in toward the Two Waters project to some extent. I think, to be honest, if a sidewalk project was started on that without getting involved with what the development's going to be on the other side of it and how to stabilize that bank, it could really be one of those things that gets away from you. Next time you go, just look at the cracks in the road. It looks like to me the city was doing some work there recently just to stabilize the bank. And of course, none of these projects are going to be perfect. So, you know, are there more kids on one side of the school today? Yes, maybe there are, but you know, in 5 years, these projects last a long time. I'm actually frustrated by the slowness of the projects going, and so I wouldn't be in favor of stopping and revisiting Lagoon Road. I don't argue with your points, but in a number of years there will be sidewalks on both sides of that road as a project develops. So I don't know. I didn't get into the nitty gritty of why one side over the other was chosen. That's these guys are equipped to do that. So I just I hear your concerns, but I wouldn't want to do anything to slow down the project myself.
Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, moving into buffered bike lanes. So last year we completed our pilot on Painter Road. Pardon me. Based on that, we leveraged a financial ask for 2024. We plan to go out in the next weeks or month to do an ITQ for the project that we planned for this year. That may get completed inside of this year, or we would push it into 2025, depending on resources and an ability to achieve that goal. The intersection of Whale and Wilford, I think we've been to this committee and a couple others a few times on that one. So you're probably quite well versed in the details of the design and choices made there. The update I have today is the planning to start construction in August with a completion in November of this year. So we're really excited about that one, working with the developer of the Wilford development there. Our bridge and culvert program, somewhat similar to our retaining wall and retaining structures program. That's leveraging a report from 2025, again, a revamp to bring it up to today's, I guess, encompassing all the new.
Can't be a report from 2025.
Apologies, 2015. Thank you.
Problem.
Getting all excited
We're
about
getting there
2025. 2015. So the bridge and culvert program from 2015, leveraging that information, re-engaging a consultant to bring it up to today's standards, existing infrastructure that we now have since 2015, brought into our ownership and obligation. Similarly, the high profile projects have been raised. We're doing an assessment relative to cost estimates of how much we could try to get addressed inside of this year. The rest will be used to leverage our budgeting for 2025. Got it that time. And we believe we'll have a little bit over $30,000 this year to do some work relative to the higher risk bridges and culverts. And then the rest we'll plan for our financial plan for the upcoming year. Perenda Lane, again, you guys have probably collectively heard quite a bit about that. That was the slope stability issue coupled with our drainage separation at the end of Perenda Lane near Perimeter Park number 2. So the temporary fix has been completed, which is a joining of some PVC pipe along with the existing CSP pipe to convey our drainage from the manhole at the top of the hill all the way down to the base, and then a riprap cobbly drainage basin at the bottom. This was done to help to stabilize the slope and not oversaturate it, but also done in a temporary manner because we know the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan is coming right through there. So we've engaged the same consultant that finalized our temporary fix. They're giving us a conceptual final fix, which will incorporate or plan to incorporate with the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan and realize in the years to come as that work gets completed. From that, we'll move into the portion of projects where I'll give you a brief update today, but really potentially we'll be coming back in the fall seeking potential input from this committee.
Just on Perenda Lane, I know you're waiting for the stewardship, waterfront stewardship program to arrive there as well. But are you considering any plantings for slope stability there?
Not for a temporary fix, no. It's pretty heavily vegetated already with invasives primarily. But there's significant growth there and stability. It's been deemed again for the short term to be safe. It's just been highlighted as something we need to address relative to climate change, coastal erosion, things like that. Larger storms. I know there's a little swale below in the drainage basin there, but we have sort of assurances for that time frame that will allow us with this temporary fix to bridge the gap until the final. But that actually segues into the seeking input because we are intending to come back to this committee, obviously with the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan, but how we would integrate this final fix to Perenda will be a component of that, which I think would be of significant interest to this group. So we'd probably come back with a few options. Even the breadth of the scope of how we address that. Is it the whole slope from Perimeter Park 2 all the way back to, oh boy, road names, where that duplex is at the end of, I think, Ocean Boulevard there.
Yeah.
Is that where we stop it, or do we just isolate it locally to that one section that has been unstable? So there's quite a bit of feedback that we can bring and engagement we can do with this committee.
Yeah, I think in all of the work that I've done on parks over the years, seen a lot of vegetative answers to slope
Mm.
stabilization. And I think that they're beneficial just because of the kind of rains that we get here,
Yeah.
that they also suck up the water as well as putting the fingers down to hold everything kind of together.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to see that we try to utilize as many natural resources as we can.
I appreciate the comment. I will say one of the early proposals is to at least do a vegetated MSE wall. But we were seeing with that slope and the significant incline of it, even the natural slope stabilization that you do see there, some of the indications that the slope is moving is that the trees have wows in them. So
Yeah.
they start growing straight and then the slope slips and then they grow straight again. So they get this curve in them, which indicates that slope is moving.
Yeah.
So it's not a candidate right now that we would be able to go in there and just do natural stabilization, but it's something we can look at as an integrated piece of the solution. Yeah.
Stuart.
The Caldwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan, that's what I refer to as the trail. Is that the same thing? Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
So that section by Parenda, whatever it's called,
Yeah.
that would be part of the beachlands work? Is that correct? Or is that?
No, the beach lines work. Oh, I shouldn't say that so categorically. I believe the beach lines work is just a little bit closer to their property line than
So the
Parenda.
beachlands cutoff was the duplexes. I guess
Okay,
I'm thinking the Parenda is on their side of the duplexes. Is that?
that's correct. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if that's the cutoff, then
So that would,
you'd be
so you'd
right.
have to coordinate with them and what their schedule may be. I don't know that, but I guess
And
maybe you do.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Regardless, we are collaborating with them relative to. I mean, the project as a whole, relative to design and what we can do, permitting. We're trying to work sort of cohesively as a group. Otherwise, it's super inefficient. Whether we'll succeed in that, I don't know. But that would totally be a piece of it, yeah, to incorporate with them.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cecil blog reroute drainage. So that was a plan or a drainage plan that we had potentially earmarked for 2024. Relative to our storm master plan and Allendale DCC and sort of localized master plan for drainage, we feel that design and realization needs to be considered. The Cecil blog piece needs to be considered in those solutions. So we're deferring that to 2025. So you'll likely hear more from us relative to that project, and again, an opportunity to influence and give some insight there. Intersection at Carindale and VMP. So this one's pretty exciting. It's been identified through the traffic model and even before that as an intersection that needs addressing. It's inside of our DCC program. It's right up there in the list. So we've engaged our consultant through the traffic modeling to do a more direct look at roundabout versus signalization. Early indications are signalization is the solution that would be better in that location. As a team, we're looking to get that solidified in sort of a design briefing or a memo of some sort to give us that clarity. We would look to share that, and then we're looking to engage for terms of reference for design, and then hope to go to the market for an RFP to design that intersection with the intent to build in 2025.
And you're also considering, I can't think of the name of the road all of a sudden. The next intersection on Carindale is quite close to it. Marianne, that's it. I knew it was a girl's name.
Mhm.
Just one of the residents who was attending council here mentioned that it's an area where there is significant traffic from the residences on Marianne, both on the north side and the south side of Carindale, and that I notice when I drive through that area because I drive through there quite regularly. It's it is backing up beyond Marianne Crescent at high traffic times.
So sorry, was that the traffic coming off of Marion Crescent onto Carindale, or more
No, the
Carindale backs
traffic
up
on
so far back?
Carindale backs up beyond
Yeah.
Marianne.
I experienced that as well.
Yeah, and you do sometimes not notice people there because you're not always expecting them, but certainly they're there. There's quite a few houses, so there has to be traffic.
Thanks for that. Other active transportation intersection works to be considered. So we were directed by council to look at other goose crossings inside of Colwood. So the Kelly and VMP Galloping Goose Crossing, that intersection has great potential for betterment. Unfortunately, Colwood doesn't own that intersection or the property around it. So we're looking to collaborate with the CRD as the Galloping Goose owner and operator, and then the ministry as I think they're a half owner of that intersection, and then Langford for the other half. So we don't have a lot of power to influence decisions there, but we're trying to collaborate and work with them and intend to inside of this year and next. Where we do have a bit more say is the Souk and Aldine intersection. So that's another one we plan to similarly do in terms of reference, go out for a design, both of which, although the Kelly and VMP may be less achievable, at least inside of our control, both of these projects Colwood would really like to see at a shelf-ready stage where our community planning team could go to the province or other lenders, or not lenders, grant holders, and seek grants to help pay for those projects. So that's something we're really keen to move forward inside of 2024 and into 2025.
Are you? I had no button pushed.
I heard you, but I didn't see it.
Any consideration of a scramble intersection at Aldine
Every time
every time?
we look at it, we consider it. As you know, Colwood doesn't have any transportation or traffic engineers on staff, so we do seek consultants to help us with that work. Often when we do things like that in higher profile, sort of more cutting edge or less regionally used solutions, we get a couple opinions. So far, we haven't seen a solution like Whale and Wilford was considered. It didn't pan out. I don't have all the details at hand today. But yeah, we would definitely put forward a sort of look at that, consider it, see if it can work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think every time I've been asked to look at the scramble idea, it's been insufficient busyness of the intersection for a scramble.
Yeah, and not being a traffic engineer is tough to answer that fully, but I would say Souk is a difficult one for a scramble where you're fully stopping traffic, and then relative to your comment around what are we stopping for, it's galloping goose traffic, which is significant at times, but the effect on vehicular commutes on Souk Road, which is an arterial, would be fairly significant. So we would look at it, we would consider it, but I can see just from those two standpoints, it'd be difficult to put forward that design.
Sorry, Roger. Roger.
Josh, I'm sorry, at the intersection of Kelly and Veterans Memorial, what were you considering? Was that the goose you were considering or the actual intersection?
It'd be both. Council's direction to staff was to look at that from an active transportation standpoint relative to the goose corridor through Colwood. So that would be the initiator, but the design, the integration would be how do we better the goose safety, reliability, accessibility through that intersection, all while either maintaining or bettering safety for vehicular access as well.
Was any consideration given to put a roundabout in there?
It's early days relative to that. We don't, like I said, we don't have ownership. We'll be chatting with the parties that do have ownership. I think the biggest thing that Colwood can do is be an advocate for the goose inside of our community, as that land is outside of our community. So those types of ideas we can definitely put forward, but we'll be influencing and not demanding in those situations for sure.
Doesn't Colwood have any jurisdiction at an intersection?
Zero.
The galloping goose is our boundary, so on the Colwood side, we have jurisdiction, but not on the Langford side.
No, I realize, but the goose crosses over the intersection,
Yeah.
I think at an angle,
Correct.
and a roundabout would have to use some of Colwood's property to do that. So it would be sort of a joint venture between Langford, the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure, and Colwood, if I'm not correct.
if a roundabout needed land in Colwood, yes, they would have to get land from us.
Okay.
But the quarter that is sort of deemed to be inside of Colwood is the ministry portion of that intersection. So the right of way, that quarter is not ours. The land touching that quarter or half of the intersection is ours. So if it needed to expand, we could give them further right of way or any means we could figure that out. But the fact of the matter is the intersection is owned and operated by two other entities that we are friends with. But moving into the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan. So we had a functional design meeting or workshop, I think it was last week. So that sort of kicked off the phase of functional design. Inside of that and in conjunction with that, active work is being done and has already been done with the local First Nations groups. In the fall, we would be looking to come back to this committee with a finalized report relative to the outcome of the functional design. So we'd be looking for that, and I think it's September is the next meeting with this committee. So we're hoping to bring an update relative to the functional design for the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan or the trail. Just a couple last notes here. Those are sort of all the projects. As this committee knows, the traffic model that Colwood had created in 2023 and are actively bettering and using in 2024, that influences our traffic master plan or transportation master plan, which influences a slew and really all of our capital works and infrastructure projects relative to vehicular updates, our active transportation program. So we're looking to bring an update to this committee relative to that work. We're starting it before that, but we'll have definitely more information, tangible things around outreach with the community engagement, and then look to engage this committee relative to early findings in that work. Linking it back primarily probably to some of the transportation model that we have and some of the findings we can draw from that. So this committee will be engaged in that process many times inside of the rest of 2024 and most of 2025.
Excellent. When you are reaching out to the public, can you try to let committee members know that, when you're doing that so that we could join in? It'll probably save you saying things 2 or 3 times if we can hear it at the same time that you're going out to the public. And then we can also maybe hear the public's perspective on things and do a little further investigation.
Right.
Find out, it would help to make the committee aware, since then we could try to lead in terms of getting more input and
Right.
finding options.
Would that be like if we did an open house or something like that?
Yeah, an
Okay.
open house, or if you're doing a drop-in at
Okay.
a music night in, music in the park, or
Yeah.
however it seems like it might be a good fit.
Okay.
It's not that you need to, wait for us to RSVP to join you or something. Just let
Make
us
you
know
aware.
that you're doing it. And then if and when members can join, then we could be a little more informed and be ready for what's coming.
Yeah, we can look at that. And then when we send out, I think a lot of while we'll try to do in-person things as well, I think a lot of it will be through Let's Talk Colwood. We'll send out surveys, we'll send out information, get feedback, things like that into other stakeholders as well. So I'll keep that
Yeah,
in
if
mind
you're
and how we can
using
integrate.
Let's Talk Colwood, maybe
Yeah.
just CC
Yeah.
the members of the committee on that invitation to Let's Talk Colwood.
That's great feedback. Thank you. Lastly, and we can do questions at the end, but lastly, I'll just say, relative to the Public Works Building and the West Shore detachment, we are going to work with the teams relative to those projects as they progress to try to bring an update to the committee in the fall, same that September point. Yeah, we'd be looking to bring an update to this committee relative to those 2 projects as well.
Okay. Yeah. And there is ongoing counter petition until June 24th for the Public Works Building, which is borrowing 8-point-something million to build a Public Works Building. Yeah. Just letting everybody know so we're all on the same page. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, anything from anyone? Oh, Ashley, sorry, I didn't.
I just had one question throughout when you were talking about some of the projects underway. You had mentioned that the committee had been informed of them at meetings, which I don't think we have. And then you're talking about coming back to the committee to inform us of future stuff. And I think we've only had this is our third meeting. So I just want to make sure that you're talking about the right meeting and the future stuff is going to come to us.
Sure. No, it's a fair point.
to make
I might have overspoke or misspoke about one or two items. I hope it was mostly in relation to the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan, which I do believe came to this committee.
No,
But it
it
didn't?
comes to the waterfront committee.
Okay, so apologies.
There's
I
too
missed-
many
I'm-
committees.
I'm saying the wrong one. I apologize. But I am speaking relative to coming back in September to this committee with
Okay.
all those projects I was referencing.
Okay,
That one is the truth.
Thanks.
Sure.
Very quick for me as well. Part of the projects you're working in, the planning you're working on through 2024. I assume the active transportation plan will be influencing a lot of that. When I look at the traffic along Machosen Road and the work that needs to be done along those intersections, I'm thinking of Lagoon and how backed up that gets to the point earlier about Carindale and the rest of it. Are those all part of the overall project plans you're looking at, or is that kind of on hold until you know more about the active transportation plan?
So the active transportation network plan is in draft right now.
Yeah.
That intersection in particular, the lagoon, is actually identified inside of the joint memo, which was done, I want to say in I don't remember, 2020 or something. It's quite a few years old now.
Yeah.
What we're doing now is the traffic model, which we've got an in-house model built where we can start to look at Colwood's current population, infer future population, inflow that into certain neighborhoods and areas and see how the traffic would respond. It's calibratable. We'll be doing that as we go forward. And as developments come to fruition, we'll sort of solidify that. That will change our traffic patterns. As Roger alluded to, traffic is like water. It goes to the least resistance and goes that way. So that's what we're using to influence our future capital works. That exact conversation is actively happening with council relative to the model right now. So the Machosen corridor, the VMP, Latoria corridor, Souk as well, I would argue, are all being sort of actively modeled. We're actively looking for data-driven decision-making relative to that and future plans. We don't have that clarity today. We're still finalizing that, especially relative to Machosen. But that intersection in particular has been identified regardless of which path Colwood we go down. It's in the hopper to be addressed. I don't have the dates on me. I think as soon as 3 to 5 years or 10 to 15, like either avenue Colwood goes down, it's a known that needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
For signalization.
Signalization.
That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
I just wanted to mention that this committee is patiently waiting to have the traffic model shared with us so that we could be on the same page and be able to make informed comments to council on infrastructure matters.
Wrote it down, underlined it twice. I'll make note of that.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. And I may need help, Amanda, because there was something else we were adding to the agenda. Okay, good. So shall we do the traffic signals and controller upgrades first? Josh, I was trying to give you a break by letting you go early. I think you'll need to push your button on your microphone at the middle at the bottom. Yeah.
Good evening. Yeah, so this is a presentation on a budget amendment for the traffic signal controller upgrades for 2024. So yeah, I'll just kind of go through the slides, and if you guys have any
Do
questions.
you want to tell the members who you are?
Oh, yes. My name is Vaughn. I work with the engineering department as an engineering tech, and I've been involved in a lot of traffic signal works, as well as a couple other projects. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Great, thanks, Vaughn.
Oh. Cool. Which so this year's budget was about $290,000. We used this budget to upgrade 3 intersections, one at Souk and Kelly, Souk and Mount View, and Souk and Aldine. Those 3 intersections were our oldest intersections in Colwood in terms of upgrades. So what we decided to upgrade was a lot of the equipment, so primary and secondary signal heads, and mounting hardware, controller cabinets, controllers and conflict monitors, pedestrian push buttons and signs, radar and video detection cameras, pre-option equipment, and timing sheets. That's just like a map showing the 3 intersections. So they're 3, they're all in a row. So we have used the majority of the budget to address those intersection upgrades. And after we've kind of started the project, we came across some additional improvements that could be made. We had a few comments or complaints about our intersection at Wishart and Metchosin Road. People found that when people approached Metchosin Road from Wishart Road, the signal would change right away, even though there'd be very busy traffic on Metchosin Road. So we decided to look a bit more into that and take a look at the timing sheet for the intersection. And we found out through investigation that the loops, some of the traffic loops for the intersection weren't fully operational. And we also found out that the pedestrian crossing countdown timers were a bit faster than they should be based on older standards. So that's one of the additional improvements that we would like to let committee know about and consider for adding additional budget for. Another one is the Island Highway and West Shore Rec Center kind of pedestrian crossing intersection there. It's when you're traveling north down Island Highway is just before Ocean and Island Highway, that intersection there. So we received some questions about how the turning signal is not operational at that pedestrian crossing. And that was turned off, I believe, years ago because there was there doesn't seem to be much signalized infrastructure on the when you're turning into West Shore Rec Center to keep pedestrians safe while walking. So that is another improvement we'd like to do, is to remove the turning signal there and to through that upgrade that intersection to keep it a bit safer. And then the third additional improvement is at Souk and Aldine and Souk and Kelly. We'd like to add some data communication infrastructure there, so that we could get additional information from those intersections, like a direct data transfer from that intersection to City Hall. So we could take a look at traffic volumes, help the amount of people going straight through the intersection or turning right, turning left, kind of get a better idea of how the intersection works. So that's the third ask for additional improvements out of all the three.
Okay, I don't understand what you were getting at for the intersection at the rec center. So there is basically a left turn into the rec center if you were coming from View Royal, and there's a right turn into the rec center from coming from Colwood Corners. And there is pedestrians which are held at the center of the road with an offset pedestrian signal to get them across to the courthouse and McDonald's. So what is it that you're adding to that intersection, and what is it that you're taking away?
So the plan is to basically remove the turning signal from there, because if we have the turning signal inoperational, people might just be waiting for the turning signal to start, and it's there, so but it's inoperational, so people are just kind of confused of what's going on there. So the plan is to remove the turning signal there so that people waiting can make sure that they pay attention to traffic coming the other direction, as well as pedestrians walking across the street. So if they don't kind of blindly look at the turning signal and say, oh yeah, it's good to go, and there's people crossing the road through.
Crossing what road though?
Across from West Shore Rec Center.
The entrance
The
itself?
entrance, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Oh. So you're worried about people crossing over the entrance to West Shore Parks and Rec while people are turning from View Royal, turning left into the rec center?
That's right.
Okay. So doesn't that require a signal for the pedestrians that are like, there's not very many people who are gonna walk across there right now. Like, nobody's walking from the rec center to to the library. They would walk internally.
To the bus.
Yeah. I guess I'm very unclear as to what you're asking us to do and whether that's justified.
If I may.
Yeah.
So the current setup in that intersection, there is a left turn signal that's been turned off. So what used to happen was you would drive up into that left turn queue length. The light would go green with an arrow saying turn left, but nothing would control the pedestrians on your left. So you would potentially be told to go left, like you have the right of way, and then strike a pedestrian crossing the entry to West Shore Parks and Rec.
Because there's nothing telling them to
There's
stop.
nothing telling pedestrians to stop crossing the entry.
So
what
are
they
you
did-
adding something to stop the pedestrians?
No. So what they've done now is just blocked off that turn signal. And the sign says turn left on a green or yield on green, meaning when it's a green light for the people on your right to go through, you can go left, but you have to watch for traffic coming at you and pedestrians going next to you. So that's a safe movement. In any other intersection, when it's green and you're sitting there waiting, you have to look around and make a safe movement.
Yeah.
So we're trying to solidify that as a solution because there's not many pedestrians going there. If it was busier and we wanted to do a full upgrade, we could look at actually controlling the pedestrians crossing West Shore Parks and Rec. But that doesn't feel like it's a necessary add today, and the cost would be quite significant. This is a cheaper fix where instead of just covering or turning off the signal light, now it just looks broken. So if you sit there and you're looking, you're like, okay, the signal, is it supposed to turn on? Should I be waiting? But it says go on green. It's confusing and it's not ideal. So the real ask is just, we're probably going to put this in as a budget request for 2025, but we've had enough complaints about it inside of 2023, the latter part of 2023, early part of 2024. We felt bringing this to committee as a potential budget ask for council might be worth it. Council is welcome to give their opinion and say no, or one of the three, or all three of the three, whatever option. But that's in essence what the situation is. We're looking to decommission that turn signal to make it less confusing.
Done?
Maybe just a history, but why was it turned off to begin with?
It's a great question. So the turning off to me makes sense. The question of why it was ever installed that way is one that we've been looking into and trying to get to the bottom of. What we're finding is we can't get a contractor just to go and remove it or tell our public works department to go remove it without a redesign of that intersection. So a document with a transportation engineer stamping it saying this meets proper design standards. That's kind of what we're after. And then the little bit extra money is to actually do the work. So we kind of know this solution. We've already done some preliminary work without incurring any costs relative to getting a solution and sort of the budget relative. But speaking to why it was installed in that way, I can't honestly say.
Okay, so thanks to the budget ask is actually to get the consultant, the transportation consultant to say it's safer to not have the light there is essentially what you're looking for.
Correct.
Or to redesign before they will go remove it for you.
What staff are suggesting is to have a consultant take the existing design, mark it up to show that what we're asking is a legitimate ask, and then have a contractor remove it for us or Public Works to do so.
Okay.
There are other options around, do we go and add pedestrian controls and keep the left turn, but that isn't something staff are suggesting today.
Okay, Roger.
Josh, I understand the reasoning, but I guess I'm a little confused. When we can block off the advanced screen to make the left, but now we need a consultant to pay a consultant to take it out. Did we not have to pay a consultant to say, can we block it off?
It'd be if I may through the chair, it'd be the liability of them going and removing that. I think it was a Public Works decision to cover it because it was adding and making the situation worse. So it was a risk management decision at the time to cover it. And we're looking to remediate that and make a more long-term and permanent solution.
So I guess I'm really confused because I was on council when we put that intersection in, and it was because it was very unsafe. We had a lot more traffic going across the road, I would say, at that point in time, because it's a very far distance between the light at the casino and the light at Ocean Boulevard. So that was why this was a mid-block crosswalk, if you will. And in order to not mess up the very busy traffic, we would stop the traffic only one way at a time. And that way, that sort of helped to manage our very busy intersection. And there are and continue to be a lot of people both turning right into West Shore Parks and Rec and people turning left into West Shore Parks and Rec from the View Royal direction. So I guess I'm confused. I thought we had done a good thing when we put this crossing in, because without a signalized crossing there, people are basically taking their life in their hands and running across the road, basically.
Yeah.
And if we take away the arrow for the left turn into West Shore Parks and Rec from the View Royal side, where I regularly see 2 or 3 cars stacked waiting, isn't that kind of defeating the purpose of this intersection?
I don't believe so. I think the intended purpose was the crossing of Souk Road or Island Highway, and that was achieved. I think the unintended consequence was putting pedestrians going along Island Highway in front of West Shore Parks and Rec at risk when drivers are told they can go left blindly. So that signal to say, go ahead and turn left without controlling the pedestrian movement in front of that entrance is a dangerous movement. And I think it was a miss at the time.
Okay.
So that left turn signal is actually not operating right now. I can't remember if it's been covered or just turned off, whatever it is, it doesn't go. There's no left turn signal right now. It's just a green.
Okay.
Saying you can go straight through and you can turn left when it's safe to do so. Okay. So we're trying to make that situation that's currently operating less confusing by removing the bottom light, which would be your left turn signal, which never turns on right now. Okay. It takes the ambiguity away around, hey, Colwood, is this broken? Hey, should I be waiting for this to turn on before I turn left? We just don't want to confuse drivers. We feel like we've bettered the situation, but it's a Band-Aid fix and we'd like to make it more official and proper.
Okay.
Happy to do it in 2025. It's just an option for bringing to council.
And is the traffic still being held going towards View Royal so that there is an opportunity for a safe left-hand movement?
No.
It's not being held at all, unless a
only being
pedestrian
held-
pushes the button.
Correct. That's right. And arguably when that happens, the light turns red. So it wouldn't tell you to turn left, which is a little bit interesting, but because we can't control or can't today control the pedestrians across the intersection of West Shore Parks and Rec, there's an opportunity often where pedestrians are crossing, so there's no traffic coming through. They could turn left, but they won't because it's red. So it's not perfect, but it's a cheap fix to better the situation more permanently until that corridor is redeveloped and through development on the right-hand side or the west side is actually done. So
And is there a loop in the ground so that if we wanted to give the car that's sitting in the left-hand turn lane from View Royal, if he's sitting there long enough that it would trigger the light to hold the oncoming traffic so that he could cross the road when safe?
we can't, because as soon as we turn it green, then the cars come at them. And if we say signalized now turn left because we're holding the cars, then we're turning them into pedestrians without controlling pedestrians.
Wow.
So that's the difficult part. And I think I drive that corridor on the way to work every day, and I haven't yet seen it sort of back out of the queue. In conversations with the consultants relative to this fix, they also do feel like just in the time since that intersection was installed and the timing sheet implemented, and today, they feel like inside of this budget that we're asking for, a signalized timing sheet upgrade or update would be viable and could help with efficiency, even moving up and down Souk Road or Island Highway. So there's kind of two betterments we can do here. So that would be relative to the wait period for pedestrians crossing into the island and then transitioning to the next button, the wait period there, how long those lights go for. We have updated traffic counts, AM, PM peaks, all that information. The traffic consultant or traffic engineer feels that there's some efficiencies to be gained in timing sheet of that intersection as well.
Okay, so the traffic flow on Souk Road would be better. And pedestrians who might be walking in front of West Shore Parks and Rec would be safer.
Correct.
But it doesn't make it any easier for people to turn into West Shore Parks and Rec.
Well, through more efficient flow in Island Highway, arguably you'd have less backed up traffic, so more opportunity to turn left into West Shore Parks and Rec. But to my knowledge, relative to the counts we have today, that's not an overly restricted movement already.
All right. We'll stop blathering and let others speak. Stuart.
Yeah, so I should confess I was involved in that project way back when, and I'm wondering if I screwed up. Um, uh, But I tell you one thing, it's the crossing now is so much safer than it was without a crossing. I mean, you see kids from the arena running across to get to McDonald's. So it's an overall good thing, but maybe like many things in life, it could have been done a little better. So I think if I understand correctly, what we're coming down to is at present or previously before it was covered up, we had a left turn signal that coincided with the stop on View Royal bound traffic on Souk Road. But that, of course, without telling pedestrians walking along the edge of Souk Road that cars were coming, that was a safety thing. So now we're saying, let's turn it off and you go when there's a gap in the traffic. Which we're still not telling pedestrians anything, but then what we're saying is look for gap in the traffic and check for pedestrians. Whereas if we have a green light saying you can go, you don't feel obligated or not as likely to look for pedestrians. Is that the improvement we're making?
Correct. The liability associated with an advanced green and not controlling the pedestrian movements, arguably vehicle drivers should be looking regardless. But the implication and the likelihood of someone looking is not strong. And if they struck someone, it's just not worth that risk.
Thank you.
Ashley.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think by the sounds of it, removing the confusion of the left turn signal not operating could also help improve the timing of turning left. There are people, there's drivers that are very cautious and they're gonna wanna wait for the left turn. Like you'll see at Ocean, the light turns yellow and people don't turn left and take their turn. So I think having the clarity on that, you'll probably actually get more flow for the people waiting when you have those more cautious drivers if they're clear on what's happening. Sorry.
Roger.
Josh, I support what you're trying to do here. I think it makes good sense. I guess my concern is I look at this, we're removing a 4-light head and replacing it with a 3-light head. So that's a crew of 2 or 3 and a bucket truck for probably 2 or 3 hours. $16,000. Where does all that money go? I mean, how much is a consultant going to charge us for putting a stamp on saying what we presently are doing is good to go?
Yeah, good point. Thank you for the question through the chair. The intent would be to come in under budget. We're trying to be conservative in these estimates. That does include, that's a very loud mic. Point taken. The intent there would be that we're hiring a consultant to redo the timing sheet as I described before. So that's a few $1,000s to redo that timing sheet. It's a couple $1,000s to have it implemented. Getting the counts from the, pardon me, getting the counts from today relative to what we had at the time to influence that timing sheet is, I can't remember, it's $500 to $1,000. So it's death by a few cuts, right? So it's, hopefully it won't be $16,000. We take those things, we put a factor of safety on. There's traffic control relative to, there's gonna be people working in a live intersection. It's got to go down and you have like, there's pieces that come into it. Working in an active roadway, I'd rather tell you it's 16 and come back and it's 12 or 8 than tell you it's 8 and then it is 16.
Just a question on the fact that we don't have on staff a traffic designated consultant type person. Are you looking at, this seems to come up a lot for Colwood, at least in my time here. There's been a lot of discussion of, is the timing right? Is the timing wrong? What do you have to do to get it right? And it's quite a few different intersections that are impacted. Granted, a lot of them are Souk Road, but because that's sort of everybody's go-to and the one where we actually have some control. Whereas if it's, Island Highway through Langford, we don't have control, right? I'm just wondering, are we gathering these up and saying, okay, we need a traffic consultant for these 5 locations, or are we going out to tender for each one?
Our business model currently is still not to have a design engineer that stamps drawings. So even though myself and 2 other staff are professional engineers, we don't stamp and design drawings. We still manage work, we audit it, and we work with them at a professional capacity. From a transportation standpoint, we would probably have the same disposition. So Vaughn has been gaining significant knowledge in this area. We're working to better that still. Even with that, we're considering and looking and always considering what we could bring to the team. But swapping out, we would use less consultant time relative to evaluating things. But in terms of designing and stamping designs and putting that through to RFP and issuing for construction, today that's not the business model we're looking at. Tomorrow we could, but as of today, it's not.
But do you do them kind of one intersection at a time, or do you consider, we have these, 4 projects or 3 projects or whatever the number is, that will need to get a traffic design consultant in to do the timing sheets and the drawings, and then group those together? Like, I'm just wondering if there's maybe a process that would make this more streamlined.
I think I understand your question better. So that would fall in line with what we've done with this program. So this was 3 intersections we identified, worked with a consultant group to identify the upgrading of the signalization equipment. So that was a grouping in terms of something we haven't done in the past. Typically, it's been one-offs. So we did bite off three at a time. These additional improvements sort of came up as and when we were investigating things. So we either through complaint or a consultant found it as they came through and started investigating things. So we had, calls for service relative to Machosen and Wishart, and that signalization not operating properly. So that stimulated, well, let's look into that and troubleshoot it. We worked with Public Works and the maintenance crew, and then it was the loops were out. So that's sort of that ad hoc piece to how we were already established doing three. So call that our bulk work for the year. And that's what brought this question to committee to see if we should consider it. I would suggest we're moving towards that even more so in the future. And that will be even easier to do so with our transportation model, where we can identify lagoon, corridor. So we might go Machosen Road, all intersections there. Okay, which ones do we lift up? Then there's, 5 shelf-ready projects. We bring that to capital planning and budget, and we identify which ones and the phasing. And it just gets better from here as our tools get more sophisticated.
And is the traffic model able to show us where timing is out?
It is roughly. So it can tell us the timing is outdated, or it can identify the timing. We don't need to redo an intersection or redesign it. Timing would be super effective for the next 5 years. And then at the 5-year mark, we have to do a structural upgrade and add components or widening, again, with a new timing sheet then. So it gives us sort of the nod to say, this is the direction you should go. But it won't pump out like a new timing sheet for that intersection. No.
For sure, for sure. I'm just looking to see if I could identify
Yes.
because it seems like, when you're driving through the area, you can identify that the timing does or doesn't work. Just drive through Nanaimo. You'll know if you miss one light, miss them all. And if you make the light, make them all. So it's kind of an interesting comparison. But then I hear from people in the community that, we haven't got it figured out. And I would imagine that that's something that we would kind of ground truth that, staff drive around Colwood. I'm sure they see it, they know it, they feel it when they're going home or coming to work or whenever they're using the road.
Yeah.
And just wondering if there's a way to improve the way we're observing these things. Just sort of checking in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are. I'm just trying to recall which meeting it was. I don't want to misspeak. Apologies for who was present at what. But the traffic model, I think we talked about the intersection of VMP and Souk.
Yes.
And that was identified as timing could help the situation,
Yes.
but a revamp of the intersection overall is required.
Yeah.
A roundabout would work for the next 40 years, and then signalization would work after that. So the model gives us really high level insights into what's going on. I think at this stage with the tools we have, it's a resourcing limitation of, we get a lot of calls for service. We get a lot of inquiries about things that aren't working. Call it 10% of which have validity or truth or are actually worth investigating. Although we have to go through all of them, it's quite a bit to go through. But that tool is very powerful to help us ground truth and validate and then move into action.
Yeah, well, I won't speak for others, but I'm pretty sure that most members of this committee are really interested in maximally utilizing the infrastructure we have. And so if there are things that we could help to provide feedback on, it would be this is a good place to begin engagement and to ask for feedback, because we're, I guess, a known quantity.
Thank you for that.
John.
Thank you. I would maybe suggest some of the information you're looking for is in intersection in number 1, where the data comes back and they can actually populate the model with it. So that's part of where you're going to be able to get a lot of that information. I'd like to move on a little bit to the actual budgets themselves. For me, these all make sense. My question to the group is if you're asking for 57,000 more, where's it coming from? Like, what are you not going to do within your allocated budget, or are you looking for additional funds over and above what has already been allocated to the program? I know it's for this program, but the overall capital program in general.
So this would be coming from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund, and it would be over and above the allocated budget that was given for 2024.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be, how do you word, it's not robbing from a project this year. Could the money be spent elsewhere? Yes. It doesn't influence the tax rate because the money already exists in that infrastructure reserve fund. So I think that answers your question relative to, we're not pushing off other work in terms of money. Now resource and capacity to actually achieve this is something we're actively working on. And it definitely came into whether we brought this to committee or just put it in for our 25 budget ask. But we do feel like we have a good shot at achieving this. If committee brings it to council, council approves it, there's some efficiencies relative to the works we already have going, the relationships we've built with the consultants and contractors executing this work. But it's a lot of work, and there's risk that it may get put into 2025 anyway. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
And I would just note that the fund that he's talking about, that reserve fund, that's where we have squirreled away all our gas tax funding. So it's money that we have banked, not knowing what to put it to just yet. Okay, Ashley. Oh no, Roger. Sorry, got it wrong. This side, that side.
Josh, a lot of this makes sense, but, and I see, for Souk and Kelly Road, an additional cost for $8,000, to include, data collection, and no problem. But $120,000, I travel that route. I'd hate to tell you how many times I go to Costco, but I travel that route all the time. And those lights seem to work perfectly fine. So what are we planning to upgrade with the existing lights to get $120,000? The 8,000 I can fully understand. The 120 I can't, because they seem to work fine.
Pardon me. Jump in if I say it wrong. The scope is I think Vaughn covered it earlier in I don't know if the slides are still there, but the actual hardware itself. So we had, I think the cabinet was redone. The actual light heads themselves. I think at one point, one of the bases wasn't rated anymore for the wind loading there's significant work that went into this. If you want to jump in, you can, but yeah.
Yeah, so as far as these works, this is one of the quite older intersections that we have in Colwood. So we wanted to ensure that all the equipment is upgraded so we can improve the efficiency of the intersection. So the plan was to kind of coordinate Souk and Kelly with Souk and Mount View and Souk and Aldine, so that during rush hour peak hours, traffic could flow with relative ease, having like in different kind of volume intervals. So that was kind of part of the upgrade of the 3 intersections, was to coordinate so that flow could travel a lot more efficiently through there. We also wanted to add some new video detection and radar cameras, so we could determine, okay, well, you know, at nighttime or different times of day, people who are speeding, we kind of use that information to, you know, potentially implement some more measures that can address that. Yeah, those are some things.
And I think one of the biggest expenses was these new cameras. So we didn't term this a pilot project, but they're a new type of camera that we're using inside of Colwood that Victoria's used and all over the Lower Mainland as well. So the unique feature that we're trying to implement here and still working out the bugs on is the radar piece. So we have a camera that detects vehicles as they approach, identifies the class, identifies the movement. So that in and of itself is super valuable to staff. Then there's the radar piece. So that separates the far out outlook. So as someone's approaching, the radar picks it up. And then the distance between where the radar first picks it up and the camera picks it up, it divides that time, or the speed, it determines the speed. So basically, if you're going over some number that we determine, say if that's a 60, we say if you're going over 75, this light needs to turn red, because if someone gets T-boned, we're in trouble. So that's the type of functionality we're looking to bring. And that did add significant cost, but that was all brought to council and already done and dusted. So I appreciate the question, but I mean, the ask today is more around the additional items, but happy to offer some clarity on the existing scope we've already achieved.
Okay. And Stuart.
I guess we talked a little earlier about the Aldine intersection.
Mhm.
So there's might be some work coming, and I'm just wondering about the efficiency of doing the upgrades you're looking for funding for tonight. If there's a deeper dive going to happen on that intersection in the short term, and you know, is this an efficient way to do it or not?
Yeah, thanks for the question through the chair. We looked at that, and we feel that all the work that we've put in, we'll be able to, for the most part, reuse. So the data collection, the additional, I guess, that we're asking for tonight, that's something we can definitely reuse and implement if the intersection's upgraded. And having that data today will help us inform how we upgrade that intersection. So we feel it's really valuable information. The second piece, the hardware being upgraded, those light standards, things like that, the signal heads themselves, secondary and primary. The ones we're replacing, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're from like 1980 something or 1990 something. They're 1991, so they're working, but you get the odd one that doesn't, it flickers or it's whatever, and we're just getting feedback that they're really old and outdated. But having brand new ones, if we upgrade this intersection in 2 years or 5 years, we can reuse those. They won't be obsolete. Or if we want to change the style, those could be moved elsewhere. So it's not a sunk cost, but we definitely feel the efficiency gained in terms of what we could have even for the next couple of years. If we're able to implement that revamp of the intersection altogether, it will help so significantly with influencing how we approach that, that it's definitely a worthwhile cause today.
Okay, I can support that. Just a tiny little question here. The budget for the traffic signal program seemed to me like it was 339,000, of which you had sort of committed 290, and now you're looking for money out of the gas tax fund. Would it not make sense to empty the traffic signal budget first, or?
I'd have to run the numbers. I think we've shown we're using the entire budget for the program.
Okay.
And we're asking for additional, but I'd have to jump on that and look at it.
I thought I had seen that the budget traffic signal program had a budget of 339. I thought I saw that. Yeah, cost of 314. So there's not much left, you know, but you might as well clean out one fund as do another, I think, or not. Yeah.
I think it's actually the opposite. So
Pardon me?
the 290, if I may, I think it's actually the opposite. We're in a slight deficit for this year already. So the 290 is the budget that we had planned to spend.
Yep.
In actuality, the scope that we're achieving, regardless of these additionals, inside of our Q2 update, you'll see a budget amendment coming forward, even to fund the existing program.
Okay.
So that's going to council directly. So we are in a deficit already.
I'll let council decide where the money comes from.
That's right.
I don't really care. Just
The
interesting.
recommendation tonight is 370,600, right? That's what we're increasing to.
correct.
And Ash.
The way I read it is that it's pulling forward the 25 budget and then asking for a bit more because it exceeds the 339.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say, as far as I can see it, like it sounds like all very useful work, with the work that's going on underway already for those intersections. It makes sense. It's not any road work or anything. It's just upgrading equipment. And I mean, if you can do work sooner, it's going to be cheaper. And while you're already doing that work, it's going to be cheaper again. I assume you'll go out and work with the same contractors and bundle these. So lots of efficiencies as I see. So yeah, fully support this.
I think the one thing I heard you say that I didn't notice in your report, and I think it would be helpful to you, is that you didn't call it a pilot project. And that part about being able to estimate the speed of the vehicle that's coming to that intersection, if it's over a certain limit, that you have the ability to turn that intersection light red to say, you know, that's not acceptable. We're going to give you a red light. I mean, they may still blow through it, but it speaks to being able to do something we've never been able to do before, which is to try to reduce the speed. Like Soup Road can be quite a thing. Like if you're driving to work and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, they're all doing 80, including the RCMP cruisers. And then we used to have, you know, the new guy got transferred into West Shore, and he would see that it's posted at 50K, and he would start pulling people over, and they're all like, what's this guy's problem? Doesn't he want anybody to get to work on time? So it becomes that thing that's very hard to change, which is the acceptable norm. And so I think that is a model that communities are looking to find a way to, you know, maybe not keep everybody doing 35 miles an hour or, you know, whatever. We're not trying to make everybody drive really slow, but we're trying to make a safe roadway. And so I think that's good. And Don, I'll let you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a numbers guy, so I just want to confirm. You're asking for 57,000 more on a 290 budget, but your budget's already 313,600. So you're asking us to recommend to council that we do, and you're asking us to go to 370. So you're asking us as well to recommend to council that we also, or that the additional overage already in place. I just want to make sure, because the recommendation or the that's in there is to say approve to 370. But it was on an original budget, so maybe the recommendation needed to be amended a little bit. Just to say, increase the budget to 370, and it's not just the increase of the 57,000 for the additional work, which I support as well. I think it's good work, but it's also to increase the overage you already have in place. Is that true? I just want to make sure.
Yeah. I think for consistency, we were trying to keep the numbers all the same because we're tracking the project as we go. The scope we already have and the council's already approved. That budget ask, we could do it either way. It could come through committee to say we suggest the full funding and we could get it that way through council. Or our plan was to go through our Q2 update, give an update on the project, show where we have some risks and likely budget overages and look for support there. We weren't needing that from committee. But we're happy to receive that from committee. So I think we could have been more clear in those numbers. We were just trying to be fully transparent with where the project was at, but we didn't maybe speak to it the best to give that clarity. So all we're after tonight, if either one is fine, but all we're after for tonight is, would committee suggest that these additional items be funded and tried to achieved inside of 2024? Or would you suggest staff just knuckle down, get the project done as we already thought we wanted to, and look to do this in 2025?
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, so I think I'm looking for a recommendation. The recommendation that's been provided to us, it does have that funny wording. It says the 370. So if you want to change that to be that we approve the 3 additional projects and the 57,000. I'm looking for what that number is, but I'm not finding it handily. What's the committee's preference on that? Let's do it.
I'd be happy to move that we approve the additional funds. Was it $60,000? Yeah, for the 3
It
projects.
makes it harder. You're going to have to work on your wording then, because the recommendation that we have in front of us is the 370,600 and the financial plan amendment, or that it be deferred. So
Okay. Yeah. And then you wanted 10,000. Then you wanted 10,000 contingency, wasn't it? 50.
That's all part of it.
Was a contingency in the 57?
Contingency was already part of it.
So I guess I'm assuming that if you've started a process with council saying we want this much money, now you should go back to council and say, well, what we thought was gonna cost X is now gonna be X plus a little bit. We'll leave that between you and council.
Appreciate
But
that.
this committee, I think, what I'm hearing and what I'm prepared to move is the additional works that you've proposed seem to make a lot of sense. And I'd be happy to move funding for those or a recommendation of funding for those three, all three projects.
3 items, 57,000.
$57,000. Okay.
57,400? What you had?
57.
57. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard you right.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and then, oh, sorry, Don, you're next. And then,
I agree with Stuart. I think I would be very willing to support the additional 57,000 for the additional work and leave you and council to figure out the overages you already have with your projects. Makes it cleaner.
I agree. Thank you.
oh, Ashley's next. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we can amend it easily, saying the 24 budget should be upgrade or increased for the 57,000. People keep saying there's 3 projects. I'm seeing 4. So I'm just like, Suk and Kelly, Suk and Aldine, Richos and Wishart, and Island Highway West Shore Rec.
I guess, yeah,
And
the,
contingency.
So, yeah, I don't know, just for clarity. But
I think the 2 data collection ones were put into one, but yes.
Okay, just for clarity, putting my chair hat on, the motion that's on the floor, could you read that back for us, Amanda? I think it's that we approve the 57,000 for the additional projects. Is that the correct wording?
Yes, that's correct.
And I think just to clarify that it's for the 24 budget, because there was the 2 options that it be deferred to 25. So recommend that for the 24 traffic signal budget update for $57,000 for the 4 proposed projects or however.
And Roger.
Josh, just for clarity, I look at the 4 projects and my math shows 47,000. So is 10,000 from the over
The contingency.
or
of
the
10,000.
contingency?
16.
Where then, because you said you've already gone over budget, where is that money coming from? If you have a 10,000 contingency and a $47,000 additional, how are you covering your overrun?
That's why we're going to council to ask for money from reserve
Okay,
because we have no funding left.
okay.
So the, just for clarity, 57,000 includes 8,000 for Suk and Kelly, 8,000 for Suk and Aldine, so that's 16. 16,000 for Chosen and Wishart, so that's 32. Island Highway and West Shore Rec, which is 9 and 6. So that took us up to 47. And then the 10,000 for contingency, that brings us to 57. And that is, do we have our motion that it is the 2024 budget that we're targeting? Okay. Perfect. Is everyone happy? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'll call the question. All in favor? That is unanimously carried. Excellent.
Thank you.
And I believe, is there anything further? I don't think so. Oh, the sustainable infrastructure funding was at council last night, and the recommendation from this committee was carried by council to ask for more information to come back to this committee, splitting it into a 50-year sustainable infrastructure plan with another 50 years, bringing us to the 100 years, and what the implications are overall for doing that. So that, just a quick update, that was before council last night. Stuart.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. Fingers are not working on this touch screen.
Thank you, Chair. So last week we had last meeting, I thought we had a good discussion on a really frankly complicated topic. that people have wrestled with for quite a while. And then we had this motion that went to council, and council, just basically bounced it back to us. I don't think it was council's words, but my sense was it's up to us to wrestle this to bed and come with some actionable recommendations back to council, whether that takes one meeting or two meetings or three meetings. I don't know. It is complicated, but as was stated several times, I mean, being a young community with some new infrastructure, we really are in a good place. So we need to wrestle with it. I thought last week with the formality and the consultant and everything was perhaps interesting, but maybe not the most effective until we as a group get our heads wrapped around what we really think. And so I'm just not sure how the best way to do that. I mean, we can certainly do it at this council, at this table and carry on. But I think there's a whole bunch of components that we kind of have to need to start knocking off the list of what we agree with and don't agree with to get somewhere. So I guess I wanted to just make sure that I wasn't misreading this group, that we were prepared to tackle this complex topic and try to get through to a point where we can make a recommendation to council who, can adjust as they see fit and for the long-term benefit of the community. So I guess but I guess I'm just throwing out there, I think it's a big task that we're going to have to work hard on, but with a heck of an opportunity at the end of it.
Yeah, I would agree. It is a very big task, and it's very leading edge. It's very new for municipalities to really look that far ahead to what you're going to need. And it's a big discussion in terms of it's very political in that it's a judgment about whose job is it to pay for these things and when. So I'll give Roger a chance here. Roger.
Well, I don't want to throw a stick in the spokes, but I'm going to. I've thought about this a lot lately, and I thought you have to be very visionary to consider a 100-year plan. You even have to be visionary to consider a 50-year plan. I think realistically, and if we wanted to have input, we should be considering a 10, 20, and 30-year. Who are we to say what's going to happen 50 years from now? I mean, and is it up to us to squirrel money away for people here 50 years from now? I don't think so. I think it's more being more responsible to create a budget that's within a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, and a 30-year plan. People down the road 10 years from now can say, okay, we're going to do a 10, 20, and 30 and keep perpetuating it along. But to have 100 or a 50-year, I don't think is being very realistic. And I would like to see that scope narrowed down to a 10, 20, and 30-year. I think that's more realistic. It's doable, and we could sort of have some idea what's going to happen in the future. So that's what I would like to discuss when it comes back to us, and not a 50-year.
Yeah, so I want to be careful that we don't get too sidetracked, because this is not tonight's issue to decide. But it's good to think about it. It's good to think about it several times. So I'll just say it's a task that this committee has been given. We'll do with it whatever the committee decides to do. It will be coming back to us based on the recommendation. Some of the reasons why we looked at such a long-term plan was because that's the lifespan of the infrastructure we're talking about. Those are our sewer and drainage pipes in the ground. That's how long they last. So that's why we're looking at that span, and then we can bring it back with whatever you feel is right. I would be remiss if I thought that all of council was completely comfortable with it. It is a big ask to think that far ahead. And I just wanted you to know that council thought about what you suggested we do with it, and they endorsed that. So we'll get another another opportunity to look at what that looks like and to make a recommendation to council, having had more time to really think about it. And I completely agree. It's a hard thing to ask us to, you know, a lot of what we have here today was here already when I moved here 40 years ago. A lot of what we have here today wasn't here, and we've had to scrape hard to put it together. So we'll see where that goes. But thank you so much for all of your contributions. I think that we're at the end, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Roger. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. You're free. Thank you so much for the update, everyone. Really appreciate it.